Good morning and welcome to another 15 minutes of flame. What's going on out there? Out in Phoenix, bright and early here in sunny South Central Texas, where we have some pretty high winds circulating through the atmosphere. But hey, it's a beautiful day, and I hope everybody has a wonderful day themselves here with this Leo moon. Got to feel good about the Leo moon. Pump up the volume, pump up the volume. That's the Leo moon. Take pride in what you do, what you feel, who you love. Speaking of taking pride in what you do, taking pride in things like protesting, social demonstrations, SJWs. Have you seen the new Pepsi ad with Kendall Jenner? The internet is all abuzz with it. It's actually incredibly funny. There's a 2-minute version of the ad. There's these ads now where they're like songs that get remixed. There's the 2.5 minute version. There's the 30-second version. Essentially, the storyline is Kendall Jenner is doing a shoot. She's doing a fashion shoot, and she's wearing a kind of a silver, almost looks like a breastplate underneath, kind of a shirt deal. And the breastplate gives her the appearance of somebody slightly medieval, like Joan of Arc. And silver, of course, is the devil's currency. So we're setting the stage here with Kendall Jenner appropriating a breastplate and the devil's currency. So then you're seeing in the 2-minute version all these different characters that are going to show up in the commercial. And the commercial is a wonderful exercise in diversity. You've got this young Asian man with plugs in his ear who apparently is a very intense and very good cello player, cellist. Then you have a very intense young woman who's doing, she's Muslim and she's a photographer. She's very into her art. Everybody's into their art. They're artcore, man. And then they're out in the streets and they're protesting, and there's two brothers and they're just shucking and jiving and doing their dance steps and strutting their cultural assignation, their cultural ciphers. And they just want peace. I just see peace signs everywhere. Harkens back to the 60s where we had, I wish I had a world to sing of gentle harmony. Right, remember that commercial? Well, this is kind of a redux of it. And they're protesting, and they are as diverse as it gets, and Kendall Jenner gets swept up into the protest. She brings with her a can of Pepsi. And her diverse horde of rainbow unicorn warriors march down the street together, knowing that they're going to change the world. And Kendall does something radical. She walks up to one of the police officers and hands him a Pepsi. And he takes it. He takes it. And then he sips it. And the world has changed forever. The cops melt. The protesters melt. And it's Pepsi, which is the Holy Communion for world peace. The commercial's terrible. And everybody hates it, but it's genius. You know why? We're talking about it. We're talking about it. People say Pepsi, oh, they're tone deaf. Tone deaf. No, they're not tone deaf. Are you kidding me? These people hire incredibly sophisticated marketers. Incredibly sophisticated marketers. You think people are going to boycott Pepsi now? We're talking about Pepsi. This is what they want. If they had some kind of, I don't know, really kind of pablum, boring ad, nobody'd be talking about Pepsi. But we're talking about it. And that's what they want. Will it increase sales? Decrease sales? Who knows? Pepsi and Coke are in a war of 1%. They're in a 1% war. If Pepsi gets 1% more sales than Coke in a year, it's a win. And vice versa. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. But really dumb. But they're good. They did it. They got people talking about it. All right, let's get into some other stuff. Before we jump down into the real kind of muck, I just want to bring up a thing that's happened on Facebook. Good friend of the show, he's been on the show before, Dave Lamacher. He has a company called Vigor, VGR, Vigor, and he sells chaga mushroom, and he also sells velvet elk antler. And Facebook will not allow him to sell his products. He can't get an ad on Facebook because Facebook deems the velvet antler stuff as being a sexual enhancement, a libido enhancer. I think that's what they called it. And they just shut him down. He can't do it. He cannot advertise on Facebook. These are products that are not geared towards, making you a man rock hard like steel for hours. These are actual supplements that people use for their health, especially people that train. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I'm gonna see if we can get Dave to, maybe Dave will sponsor my show or something like that. I'm going to give him some coverage. Meanwhile, I get prepubescent twats, even if it's not their real picture, all the time that want me to sign up for their webcam. Facebook is one of the... It's just so hypocritical. It is a machination of hypocrisy. I just wanted to point that out. So if you are interested in Dave's products, go check out VIGR. Let's take a stand against the machine. Okay. All right, let's get into some stuff here. First of all, North Korea has fired another missile. South Korea is getting antsy. Japan's getting antsy, and the U.S. is saying time has run out. Time's run out. Which means that they're thinking about doing a preemptive here in North Korea. Now remember, North Korea has nuclear weapons. How in the hell did North Korea get nuclear weapons? Can somebody answer that for me? I mean, that's just ridiculous. That's like kind of like making David Brock or John. It's like making John Podesta the head of a preschool. You know what I mean? That's what it's like. North Korea having nuclear weapons. How come the UN, the almighty UN, who's changing the face of American cities every single day, and they are, how come they've never stepped in with North Korea and basically said, we're taking them away. We're going to send people in there, we're going to take them away, and what are you going to do about it? Because they did it with Iraq. They tried to do it with Iran. No. Got to have that boogeyman out there. Well, looks like the boogeyman is about to have their loan called. So the time has run out on North Korea. Get ready. Something big's going to happen here soon. It's in the air. These guys in the Trump administration, they're horny for war. Mattis, McMaster, man, they are horny for war. The military-industrial complex got that itchy trigger finger. And they want it. So the Susan Rice affair, it's 9/11. The Susan Rice affair is taking on some momentum here. Susan Rice is married to some guy from ABC. That's her husband. So let me read this to you here. Her husband's name is Ian Cameron. He's an executive producer. Ian Cameron. It says here, senior Fox correspondent Adam Housley revealed on Friday that Intel chair Devin Nunes knows who unmasked the identities of Trump and his close associates. Sources also told him that the unmasking was purely for political purposes to embarrass Trump and had nothing to do with national security. Then, over the weekend, it was confirmed that Obama National Security Advisor Susan Rice requested the unmasking of incoming Trump officials. This is perhaps the biggest news stories, one of the biggest news stories of the year, maybe the biggest story of its kind ever. It's true. I mean, it's really kind of unprecedented. Nobody ever did that to Obama. Bush didn't do that to Obama. That politicians were using U.S. spying techniques to put in place to protect Americans from terrorists to spy on competing political campaigns is unheard of in U.S. history. This goes all the way back to 9/11, the Patriot Act. It is Pandora's box. Ever since that happened, shit like this is being done all the time. The coverage in the mainstream media was apathetic. It's true. They don't want to touch it. They don't want to talk about it. But the coverage at one major MSM outlet was non-existent. ABC News this morning has no mention of the story on its homepage. ABC also has no mention of it on its politics page. Perhaps ABC isn't covering the story because Susan Rice's husband, Ian Cameron, was an ABC News executive producer. ABC has always been the right arm of the CIA. Anybody who knows anything about the big three networks knows that that's what ABC's role is. It has been for years. So this is probably the company protecting itself and, of course, protecting Susan Rice. What was her response to all this? It's kind of funny. What was like? It's like you something you would kind of expect, but also maybe not expect at the same time. It was like, I ain't it. I don't want to get in trouble here, but let me see if I can find it. It's actually a very funny response. Hold on a second. Here it is. She says, I leak nothing to nobody. I leak nothing to nobody. That's her response. This is the woman that was in charge of national security for 8 years, and that's the best she could come up with. I leak nothing to nobody. My God. She could have said, I didn't leak anything. There were no leaks. I didn't participate in any leaks. No, instead we got the Pepsi version. I leak nothing to nobody. How about that? Says here she ordered detailed spreadsheets of intercepted Trump team phone calls. About that. By the way, if you are in the local Philly chapter of Black Lives Matter, you're not welcome to their next meeting. In case you didn't get the text, I'm just letting you know. You'll have to find another group to sympathize with. BLM bans all whites from their next meeting in Philadelphia. I'm sorry to break the news to you. I know it's rough, but you'll have to find something else. Let's get into this thing in Atlanta. This is really extremely underreported. Really underreported. I'm going to read this to you here. This is that's a YouTube video. Let's go back into this. Hold on a second. Something big happened in Atlanta, and I just want to go into my messages here and get the latest. So this is it comes through the Sorchafal website, and you've got to take your Sorchafal with a grain of salt. But apparently, the Atlanta attorney who was asking for documents on what happened to the freeway overpass got assassinated. Let me read this to you here. So again, we have a grim new. Oh, okay. So now, all right. Here we go. Now it's making sense. Remember, I was reading the story about Trin Huynh, Trin Huynh, Huynh. She was the woman, the attorney that got killed in Atlanta. Up close, guy walked up to her with a pistol, smoked her, and she was done. So let me read this to you. It says, a grim new foreign intelligence service report circulating in the Kremlin today. It says that Trin Huynh, one of the most knowledgeable construction attorneys in Atlanta, Georgia, was gunned down in broad daylight yesterday, just minutes after she filed legal requests at a federal courthouse for all U.S. and state Georgia documents relating to the believed to be Islamic State, ISIS, ISIL, Daesh. By the time ISIS is vanquished, they'll have about 15 names, 15 different names. And don't think that this isn't intentional, by the way. This is yet another kind of mashup of language and group and identity. The terror bombing of the I-85 bridge, with Atlanta street sweeper and eyewitness Tony Booker telling local police about this assassination. She was crossing the road, and he draws out his gun and shoots her 3 times. She drops, and he takes off running, and whose military-bearing assassin was captured on video surveillance recordings running away from the crime scene. Okay, so it says here, according to this report, Trin Huynh was a Vietnamese-American attorney with the Gibson Law Firm, LLC, who specialized in contractor litigation, and was a graduate of Princeton University and received her law degree from Emory University School of Law, that's down in Atlanta, where she was awarded the Emory Order of Advocates, the State Bar of Georgia Prizes for Labor and Employment Law, and was a member of the Emory Moot County Society and the Lamar Inn of Court, who prior to joining Gibson was an associate in the government contracts and construction practice group at Powell Goldstein LLP, and most recently was a senior associate in the government contracts and construction practice at Alston and Bird LLP, where she was an active member in the Georgia Asian Pacific American Bar Association. This is a young woman who apparently was very accredited and very connected. Nothing wrong with that. I'm not making any kind of commentary about her aspirations and her connections and her desire to achieve. So knowledgeable, in fact, Trin Huynh, in her construction field of expertise, this report continues, she authored many works on the subject too, including her 2009 book titled The ABCs of Federal Government Contracting. She sounds really interesting. And her likewise 2009 publication and course titled Construction Record Keeping and Documentation Requirements for Government Contracts. It's amazing that somebody would be so into that, isn't it? It's like, wow, that they'd find that fascinating. Thank God for her. And this is actually kind of tragic. Actually, it's not kind of, it is tragic. Co-presenter, Lorman Education Services. Okay, here we go. As an in-house attorney, also for UPS, she's working. Man, this woman sounds amazing. The world's largest package delivery company, headquartered in Atlanta. This report details Trin Hoon yesterday appeared at the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Georgia. Okay, so what we're establishing here is she knew what she was doing. She knew the ins and outs of the system quite well, and she was investigating something. Because it was her job, that's why. Where she filed legal papers for UPS asserting a force majeure claim due to the destruction of the I-85 bridge. This is a common clause in contracts that essentially frees both parties from liability or obligation when an extraordinary event or circumstances beyond the control of the parties, such as a war, strike, riot, crime, or any event described by the legal term act of God, occurs. Along with Trin Hoon filing her force majeure claim for UPS, this report notes her further legal findings contained what SVR analysts were saying were common and natural legal requests for all U.S. and federal and state of Georgia documents relating to the I-85 bridge explosion. But that within 30 minutes of her making these filings, she was assassinated, with all the legal documents she filed then disappearing, become non-existent. Wow. Think about that. If this is true, then there are two things that are possible here. One was that she had been under some kind of surveillance, like we all are. Let's just be honest, since 9/11, we're all under the microscope of the all-seeing eye. Or after she made the request for the filing, somebody inside one of those departments sent a text or an email, or somebody had been to one of those departments and said, if anybody requests any information on this bridge, you have got to let us know. Because it took only 30 minutes from that request to somebody tracking her down and tragically killing her. I mean, this is a woman who looks like she was very connected and also quite popular. Oh boy. Okay, here we go. As to why Trin Hoon had to be assassinated, this report continues, is due to the long-standing policy of the American deep state intelligence operatives currently at war with Donald Trump, of using what are called message killings in order to strike fear to anyone interfering with their objectives. And that in this particular instance involves keeping the knowledge of the Islamic State terror attack away from the Trump administration, as it supports Trump's warnings of how great a threat the terrorists are to the U.S. Now, I'm not sure about that, and I'm not even sure that the Islamic State carried this out. It could be possible. It could be possible. What we do know is that something big happened in Atlanta. Freeway overpasses just don't melt. With SVR having previously detailed evidence that Islamic State terrorists had infiltrated themselves into Georgia from Syria, blew up the I-85 bridge in Atlanta, 31 March, catastrophe strikes in Atlanta after ISIS terrorists blow up main I-85 bridge, and how after this terror attack, U.S. deep state operatives are furiously working to cover up the true facts. This new report chillingly reveals that Deputy Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Andrew McCabe, has personally taken charge of this investigation. And here's a little sidebar on him. He is the FBI Deputy Director who helped investigate Hillary Clinton's use of private email while she was Secretary of State. Andrew's wife, Jill McCabe, received nearly $600,000 in donations to her Virginia State Senate campaign from Hillary Clinton bundlers and Clinton ally and Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe. Andrew McCabe did not report this fact when he filed with the Office of Government Ethics. Of course, this whole world, the government is slimy. It's just bad. There's very little redeeming that we can grab from any of this. Critical to note about FBI Deputy Director McCabe, this report explains that he was appointed by FBI Director James Comey to be this intelligence agency's number 2 official shortly after President Trump took office, but who stunningly failed to list on his financial forms. We got the whole Jill McCabe thing there. With the 700 feet of the I-85 bridge now having to be replaced, and they say here due to the Islamic State terror attack, and the state of Georgia Department of Transportation breaking with the deep state and revealing the only non-combustible materials restored underneath it, this report concludes that the assassination of Trin Hune leaves only Atlanta City Councilman Clarence Terrell C.T. Martin calling for the true facts behind this terror attack to be known, but who SVR analysts estimate has most likely less than 2 weeks before he too is neutralized. Okay, so remember this name, Clarence Terrell C.T. Martin. If something happens to him, we can trace it back to this Atlanta thing. I don't think it was, I don't know. To just broadly say that this was ISIS, ISIL, Daesh, I don't know. I think that there's always something deeper going on. There's always something behind the forces that appear to be the forces of terror themselves. I'm just saying. Nothing is as it appears or seems. Fascinating. The thing that blows my mind here is how quickly she got killed. Within 30 minutes of her going to that courthouse. That's extremely sophisticated tracking. Like they had somebody within range, within 30-minute range, that could track her. Think about that. So she was either already under surveillance, which is creepy, or they acted swiftly and were able to use her cell phone and geolocate and find her. Hunt her down like an animal. Boy, this is an intense story. Of course, being grossly underreported. And my sense here with all of this is that we're close to something big happening. You add everything up from the photos that were released of the Pentagon to what we saw in London, which was fake, what we saw in St. Petersburg, which was real, what happened in Atlanta, which is mysterious and bizarre and, quite frankly, very shocking. Something is coming, and that something will tilt the balance of where we are. I just got a text from my son. He made the discus event this week for his track meet. He's very happy about that. You can let me know right away. So, what can I say here? Except, you got to be prepared. You've got to be on your toes. If you be on your toes spiritually, you have to be on your toes physically. You got to be in good shape. If you have not been taking care of your body or doing your best to get into good shape, I'm going to implore you to get on a crash program here over the next 90 days. You've got to be in shape. If the shit hits the fan and you're out of shape, you're out of luck. And as always, keep 30 days worth of food on supply. Food and water, at least 30 days. 60 is optimal. 90 is great. 30 days is essential. If you've got it, then you can, ride some things out. Make sure if you have to do a getaway, get out of a city. By the way, the flight out of cities is phenomenal. People are leaving cities right and left. There's a massive migration happening out of California. People are moving back into the middle of the country. They're moving into smaller towns. The statistics are out, and they completely support it. Cities are becoming prisons for all intents and purposes. And I know it sounds quite dramatic, but it's true. They're becoming prisons. What do we have here? Somebody sent me something. Oh, okay. So you've got to be in shape. You've got to be on your toes. You've got to be kind of spiritually aware and awake. You got to be clean as much as you can be. So there's no cognitive dissonance. There's no carbon in your pipes that's fouling your system. I mean, it's all systems go right now. And really, to be honest with you, that's the way it should be and always should have been. We've been lulled into states of indolence. We've been lulled into states of false luxury. We've been seduced by materialism and comfort. And it's that seduction and that trap which has allowed us to be lazy and lose touch with our essential qualities, like our will. And while all this has been happening, the world was stolen from us over the last 60 years. And I don't think anybody really is to blame for it, except for the fact that ultimately it comes down to us and what we choose and what we choose not to do, what we consent to, what we give our intention towards. But we're waking up. We're waking up to the toxicity of culture. And that one goes pretty deep. We also have to factor in the trauma that we've experienced, both on an individual level and on a collective level. Who hasn't, in their own personal life, experienced some kind of very intense trauma? If you haven't, then you are a product of a very conscious kind of upbringing. Or you've just been incredibly lucky and fortunate. Most people have experienced some very deep trauma. This is kind of the hell realm here on this planet. So we have the individual trauma, then we have the collective trauma, and what we have is large groups of people running around wounded and programmed. So what we're doing is we're healing the wounds and deconstructing the programming. And that's a good thing. Is it too late? I don't know. I don't know if it's too late. But it's what we have. It's what's on your plate. It's what's on your table. And you may as well get to it. And keep in mind that every time you do something that is conscious and awake and aware, that you actually contribute to some greater force that sustains and propels us forward. All right, why don't we call it a wrap for today? Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to say what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. This has been your 15 Minutes of Flame. I'll be back tomorrow, 24 hours from now, with another dose of reality. Here we go.